session, I explained how me and my generation of friends who became Christians in my time deal with interesting problem that happens most Christians, at least in the context where I come from in Latin America, is this type of dualism where God seems to be interested in the spiritual things only and not in the natural things. And that leads us to strange situations, but they go against our faith. For instance, we always think about spiritual things like those we do the church, and if we think about the Catholic context where I grew up, we tend to call the church as the house of God. And that immediately makes me think that God is not at my house, my home. So when I go to church, I tend to be a good person. I do everything right. I even feel right, probably. And but when I go home, I get relaxed. Maybe I don't behave that well, and my children notice that. Well, if you do this through the years, if you think that God is in certain areas of life and he's not concerned about others, you will get into trouble. See, that's what I understand is a Christianity without a biblical worldview. This problem becomes very destructive in the end, and we don't notice it easily. Let me give you an example. I have lived for many years, 6 or 7 years in Guatemala. Guatemala is a wonderful country. I keep beautiful memories about this country and the people. And Guatemala is one of the most evangelized countries in Latin America. They have many records that you can think about in terms of in this process of Christianization of Guatemala since the 18th century, since the 18th, when missionaries from the United States came to the country and filled the country with churches everywhere. I remember Guatemala is a very, very small country, and I remember the year 2000, probably. I read in the newspaper that there were already some kind of like 12,000 churches in the country. Temples constructed in such a small country. It means that you can see a church just watching in any direction, and that was true. And almost 30% of the population confessed to be evangelicals, and plus you can add a good group of Catholics, very good Catholics, and then you had a country with a huge amount of people who were believers, and you could notice that every Sunday. Mega churches, all sorts of ministries, denominations with thousands of churches all around the country, and but in spite of this, Guatemala was at the same time probably the most violent country in Latin America. I mean, if you consider other countries like Paraguay, for instance, that has a very little amount of Christians, was safer to live in Paraguay than in Guatemala. And at the same time, Guatemala had one of the highest rate of child malnutrition. And, there is much poverty in Guatemala than what you could think, and the distribution of land and is very unjust. And the education was very low. And I remember my brother my oldest brother, when I told him that I was going to live in Guatemala, he told me, "Why do you want to go to Guatemala? Do you want to die?" And I was supposed to go to a Christian country, what I could consider a Christian country, and it was interesting to go to the international airport in Guatemala. You could easily see a big name in the evangelical world arriving or departing. So you could see Christians everywhere. And the question is, how come a Christian country can be a dangerous place to live? Or how come a country with so many believers in so many churches at the same time has a high rate of child undernourishment or I mean, the violence you get to see in Guatemala or you hear about is something you won't hear everywhere. I mean, it's incredible. You see, something is wrong. The thing is, shouldn't it be the other way? You know, shouldn't it be a peaceful country, a nice place to live because it's populated by people who believe in God and confess Jesus as the Lord, you know? But the truth is not. That's not what happens. And my answer to that question is, yes, you have a huge population of people who confess Jesus as the Lord, who believe in the gospel, but do not have a biblical worldview. You know, and that's what produces this type of Christianity when you think that certain things are spiritual and they should be your concern and not the natural life. When you live the natural life aside, you are saying Jesus is king in these things and he's not king in those things. So you can do whatever you want. So believers are not strong enough, and they can fail in their personal lives, or they can be surrounded by a society that is getting corrupted more and more. So the implementation of a biblical worldview is a very important process. And that's the only way to give all the answers that this type of Christianity needs, and can at the same time encourage you to live a more exciting life of faith, you know, being able to take the gospel to your home and take the gospel to your work, and principle by principle you can take the kingdom of God to the rest of life, you know, and then the whole nation can be blessed by a group of people who have good news for the problems of society. And one of the things that has helped me more to understand how to help people to get a biblical worldview is a material that was made by Daryl Miller. It's called the Development Ethic. I have used it, and it's a principle-centered teaching, and it's quite interesting because it helps you to deal with paradigms that if it can become practical, it can help people to discover how can they transform according to the Bible many areas of their own life, starting from home. It's principle center means that we probably don't notice, but we work or we live according to many paradigms that we have accepted in our minds through the years, probably from our early years of life, and many of them do not come from scriptures. They need to be changed. But to do this process is a very let's say, it's a very serious process. It's not something easy to do. That's very, I have to be very honest saying this. That's the reason why I said that you can find people that can talk to you about biblical worldview, but essentially he's not saying that he's living it. Living a biblical worldview is always a confrontation with many issues that you have in your life, and you were able to see it through this principle-centered idea. That happened to me when I started using it, but it's in my case it's been amazingly successful. And with the people I have worked during some years in Guatemala and Food for the Hungry, it proved to be a way of teaching that we should pay more attention, because it's really nice. Teaching by paradigms, it's quite an educational process that can give you the chance to see how people changes effectively, and the thing is that there is a fundamental idea in this principle center, or in the whole Bible, in fact, is that truth produces life, and lies produce death. When I say death, I'm not saying that people just die. What I'm saying is that it produces the corruption of life, poverty, immorality of all kinds, and people get away from God if they follow lies. But I'm not saying truth or lies in the sense of simple concepts, What I'm saying, truth or lies, is I'm talking about things that you probably don't know, but are working in your mind from a long time, And normally, if you operate from a paradigm, you normally are not aware of that. For instance, something that you can see when you go to another country. I don't know if you have experienced this, but when you go to another country, you immediately see the difference in the aspect or in the appearance with the things you live at home. For instance, let's say if I come to the States, if I come from Latin America, and from some places of Latin America, the first thing that strikes me is that it is clean. Maybe for an American person it's not noticeable because that's how the world is. But that's because it's a paradigm in their own minds. They are careful about the trash and the things you leave outside. But we in Latin America are not that careful. In fact, for many people, it's normal if you just throw the trash on the sidewalk. So if you are an American and go to South America, you will probably be struck by trash. That's because you see it, but they don't see it. That's the power of a paradigm. It can. If it's the idea that it's deep in your worldview, you won't be able to see it, and that's how life is normally lived, So it's hard to go to a place and to tell people about their problems when they don't see them, and and it can happen in many ways, in many ways. I mean, probably. Let's say the way people dress, In some communities, people use a lot of clothes, and because we have a sense of how to cover our nakedness, I don't know. In some places, women don't use short sleeves, and others they do, or short pants, and others they don't. But if you go dressing in a certain way to a certain culture, you can be misinterpreted immediately, because we all operate from different paradigms. So to deal with paradigms is a very interesting thing, and in terms of development, it's probably a interesting thing to see that poverty or corruption is produced by ideas that people have in their own minds, and they don't even notice them. I mean, they don't even know it. They can't see it. So what we do is we try to help them see it, and then is when an aha moment happens, and that is especially important with Christians, because Christians come to the church, they give their lives to Jesus, they want to be good believers, but the problem is that they have paradigms that are not according to the Bible, and they need to be taught, they need to be trained, they need to be re-educated in a sense that they can become aware that the kingdom values, the kingdom of God paradigms are different than them. That happened to me in many ways, and that happened to many people that I have been able to teach about this principle center. The thing is that we normally, when we visit a place where people are doing wrong things, we misjudge that, in the sense that we think they do it intentionally, with a bad heart. But most of the time, it doesn't happen that way. It's just that they see life and how the world works through certain ideas, and they cannot think in a different way. I remember when I was working in Guatemala, I was working with Food for the Hungry, and we had to help indigenous people to progress, So I was in charge of a group of local people who live in the small city surrounded by poor communities, but they were supposed to be a little bit more educated and more capable to do this work in order to help the indigenous who live around. And I remember they were working happily with us, and one of those days our office asked us to be able to measure the changing of their behavior. I didn't understand the thing completely, because that's very subjective, how people changes. You can measure nutrition, weight, or things like that, but how people changes, we have to come out with an idea and to be able to measure it. Okay. Well, that was hard to do, and I had to explain it to the people that was working with us. And I told them, we are working for the changing and progressing of people, and we have to be able to measure it. And when I was talking about that, they began to watch to each other and see, something was going on among them. And well, finally, one of those guys, he asked for the opportunity to say something, and I said, yes, what you want to say? And he said, brother, because you are not from this country, I'm going to tell you how things are. It's interesting when someone tells you that, because it's how he sees things. And the thing is that he told me, we live in this country, and we know that these indigenous people, they don't change. They are just that way. That's why they are poor, and they are that, and it's worthless to try to help them to change. And I was just shocked because they were believers. They were supposed to be paid for, to make a job that they were just simulating probably, but they didn't believe what they were doing. And that's a kind of revelation, at that moment when you can see how people think or they confess it, And that conversation continued and ended up in something really good. But you can see people with a paradigm different than others. When I can see people and I can see the plan of God on them, I can see them worth to educate them, worth to help them. I can see their potential, while others don't see anything. And that it's caused by a paradigm in their minds. The only problem is that they are not conscious about that. So this group of people that I was telling this story, some months later they said, yes, people can change. But that happened too because they were able to change too. They didn't notice that they were stuck in their own situation, and God worked a lot in that moment. But they were able to see that they could change more than they thought, and people too, and everything changed at that moment. It was an exciting thing to see. But a paradigm can get you in bondage, and you cannot move in any direction while you are still there. And what you need is someone to help you see yourself and to get liberated of that, And that happens when you are able to be educated in this type of principle center curriculum that leads with paradigms. So teaching through paradigms is something nice and very important to know how to do it, Most of the time, believers go to church and they sign for a Bible study, and what they get is verses and memorize this, and they get nice information, but basically that cannot remove those paradigms, So you can find all sorts of believers that live in a place where things are clean and people are nice, and they memorize their verses and they do great in those Bible classes, and you can find believers in the other side of the world where things are just corrupt and they are good students too. So teachings like that cannot change, behaviors. It's until you understand the power of these paradigms and how to deal with them, you won't be able to make a progress. So truth produces life. That's what the Lord told us. I came for you to have life and abundantly, That means that, in my opinion, it's a type of freedom where you can enjoy all aspects of life, like food, for instance, or home life, for instance, or work life. God created life for us to be happy. For us to be, to develop, to see progress, to see the things become better and better. God created universe for that. He didn't create universe for us to be, just in trials and difficulties here and there. But we can come from a world like that, and we bear that kind of faith, but that's not true. Truth is that if you get to see things the way God sees them, and you can operate from that perception, it will have consequences, and positive consequences, Because that belongs to our nature. There is a teaching here. It's an interesting teaching. I have learned a lot from it. It says that God made creation a moral order. You know, I never heard such a phrase. Never heard something like that. I mean, that was something new. Even the name, God made the universe a moral order. And what does it mean? It means that we all human beings, you know, we make decisions. I mean, that's our nature. What I say is the basic of our nature is that we are created to make decisions. Can you believe that? I mean, we eat, we sleep, we do this, we do that, but basically our life is defined by our ability to make decisions. So, and I not wonder why the Lord took Adam and Eve in front of two trees and told them, make a decision. Make a good one. I'll help you. If you eat this one, you'll die. If you eat from that one, you'll live. I mean, maybe. But you know, from the beginning, you say, why did he do that? Because that's his nature. We make decisions, probably hundreds during the day. But what I think about is more important is the decisions that we make and we don't notice that we are making them. I mean, there are conscious decisions like if I want coffee or water. There are conscious decisions like, for instance, if I dress this color or the other, or if I go to school and leave the kids, or first I go to the other side. Well, there are many conscious decisions, many even important decisions. But in my opinion, the most important decisions are those you don't think about them, but they are operating subconsciously. You know, like, for instance, the way you work. In Latin America, it's a big issue because most people in in that part of their consciousness, they think that work is a form of exploitation against them. And if they subconsciously are trying to minimize what they do not contribute. But sometimes, I mean, let me give you another example, probably. I have worked in many, and I have worked and lived in some places, different places. And something that calls my attention very much is at what age a woman, a girl, gets married. You know, I've been working with the Pocamchi, and the Pocamchi can get married. A Pocamchi girl can get married at 12 years old. Can you believe that? Well, that's to us, to our lenses, to our way of seeing life, it's too hard, right? But a girl of 12 years old can be given for marriage. So, if you go to Bolivia, you're going to find two different cultures. People who live in the lowlands, they get married very early too. Not probably at 12, but kind of 15 is fine. And if you go to the highlands, you're going to find that girls do not get married. Mostly they get married beyond 20 years old, maybe 22, 23. If you go to some cities, you will find girls that get married probably later. There are other priorities to get to become professionals, or probably to find an apartment where to live, things like that, you know. So age is not the concern. But think about this. You know, in the lowlands of Bolivia, girls, they don't notice it, but when they are 14, 13, they get excited naturally. And there is a narrative in their minds that when they are kind of 15, a boy will come and propose them to run away together and become and make a family together. You know, that's like a story, and that's fine. So boys in that place, they see a girl of 15 and they see them in the perfect age to get married. That's what they see, you know. What is interesting is that girls in the men in the highlands, they see a girl of 15 and say, but she's a child. You know, they don't feel attracted by a girl of that early age. And the man, you know, he's more interested in a woman who is more mature, and she's able to take care of home and, you know, responsible. That's what he wants. And then when he sees a girl of 24, 23, then he's interested. But he's not interested in someone that is 15 years old. And this is funny because if a girl, you know, she grows and she's 15 or 16 and there's no guys around her, she feels uncomfortable. But it's not a conscious thing, it's subconscious, you know. Someone is telling her that this is the age, but how comes it happens differently in another culture? You know, subconsciously there are many decisions that you don't know, but they are being taken without you notice it. You know, like at what age are you going to get married, the way you do business, and things like that. Many of them are not necessarily things that you think hard. It's something that you've been walking towards during your life and you reach the point. You don't know how, but you are there. Ready for marriage at 15 years old. And who told you that? You know, nobody. You know, it just happened. But it's not that just happened. It's a narrative of your culture. It's a paradigm, you know. And it is funny because when a girl doesn't get married at 15, 16, 17, 18, and nothing happens, men tend to see her too old. You know? Can you imagine to see a girl of 20 years old and see her old? But that's what happened. So women around her tell her, look, you are too old to get married. Why don't you go to the highlands where men see a woman and they want women above the 20 years old, and maybe you will be lucky and get married with someone, you know, because if she goes there, men will see her in the right age. So it's decisions. We people, you know, make decisions all the time. And can you imagine a very important decision like getting married is taken sometimes without thinking about that, you know, and that produces powerful consequences in life, you know, powerful consequences, and it can be a huge problem in society through generations. But anyway, we people make decisions, and that's our nature. That's what I say, you know, birds fly, fishes swim, and what human beings do, and some people say they walk. No, they don't walk. They do something particular. They make decisions. That's our nature. If you see things from that point, you will understand many things. So it's important that people may have truths in their minds as paradigms, so they will make the right decisions while they walk in life, consciously or subconsciously. You know, they have to have them. I mean, but if they have lies, you know, then the consequences can be terribly. I mean, we are going to see more examples of this a little bit further, but what I say is that God created universe as this book says that as a moral order, and then it is very important that our paradigms can be constructed based on truths. And if we study them and we can make an education out of them that can help us to transform our paradigms, then things that they are the only way that we can use to gain the rest of life for the kingdom of God or for a biblical way of living. Every culture has their own paradigms, some good, some wrong. But what is interesting is that life produces, truth produces life, and lies produces death. So if you go to a place, whatever it is, and you see wrong things happening, for instance, much poverty, women being, treated badly or whatever, you have to understand that those are the things you see, but what you don't see are the ideas that are underneath that. It's like a tree, If you see a tree, you can see the trunk, you can see the leaves, you can see the fruits, but you don't see the roots. They are underground and you can't see it. The same way works with societies. You go to another place and you see things that you never saw, probably poverty or whatever, and then the wise thing to do is to think that there are ideas in the mind of these people that they can't see that are producing these consequences.